Hello, this is a video to go over the new events slash non-client specific activities module in Empowerdb. So first we're going to go over what this is, and then I'm going to show you how to set up the module. So let's take a look at our add client activities box up here. We have activities for individual client, groups, and now we have add activities for events. So you can choose to name this module anything you want. I've chosen to name it events, and the rest of this demo you'll hear me say the word events, but any kind of non-client work can be tracked in here. So trainings, outreach, tabling, admin work, whatever word you feel like best fits the type of things that you'll be adding in, we can set up like that. So we're going to click on events. And each of the three, each event will start with these three options: the staff who's putting it in, the type of event that we're adding in, and these are the four that I've already added, and I'll show you how to add in new options here, and the date that the event was held on. So let's say we did a DV training, and now here's a bunch of options for the DV training. You will get to define every single option here. You won't need me to set up this for you. This is kind of really the powerful thing about this new event module. You'll be able to really define whatever you want to be able to track. So let's do an example of what we would put in here. So let's say DV 101. We had 12 people there. 4 of them were new. Let's say 10 females and 1 male. And let's pretend it was at a high school, so everybody was that old. Duration 1 hour, and the region was Boston Metro. And with each activity you can put in a note, so you can say like, high school students very engaged. And submit. And so with every activity, of course, we can click on our calendar, and we can see that on June 4th, DV training happened. Here's all the information about that. We can edit it or delete it. Switch to outline and see it in outline mode. And that's how to put in the data. So let's talk about now how to set up new event types. We're going to go to database administration, and in client activities we have event types. Obviously, if you chose a different name for this module, it would be whatever name you chose. Event types. And here are the types that we have available already. But we can also add a new event type. And if it's your first time using this, you'll want to click on Help with Adding Editing Types to read more about things you need to know. So let's start with Add New Event Type. And we're going to say what's the name of the type. So we already have DV training, but let's say we want to set up a new event type called legal training. And this is active, and the options, it wants to know, do you want to create a whole new structure? So do you want to start from scratch and define, I want this variable, this type, or do you want to use the same exact structure, something that already exists? So let's say this event had all the same options as DV training, the where was it, how many people were there. You would want to select DV training to, one, save you the trouble of going through and recreating all of the different event options that could be there. The other positive thing about selecting same as and selecting another one is that when we get to the reporting, running reports off of this data, if it's the same exact structure, the database will be able to combine those two sets of data together. But let's say admin work has a completely different structure from DV training. You'll never be able to run one query that says how much time was spent on admin work and on DV training. Since the structure of the data is completely different, the database won't know how to combine that information together. So you would have to run 2 separate queries. So in this example, let's create a whole new structure and add event. And since we opted to create a whole new structure, it's sending us over to the page where we can define what variables we want and all that type of stuff. So over on the right are the different headers / variables available to you. So let's go down and see the different things we can pick. a header line. You can drag that over there. And now we can say like just attendance information. Done. And that's just going to be kind of just a prompt for people putting in data. Text block. So notice with the variables, you can choose for the variable to be on the left column, on the right column, or spanning both sides. So we're going to put this one on the left, and we're going to say we want this variable to be called training name, and we want it to be required. And then the database is reminding us that the options are simple one-line text input. So any type of characters can be inputted into this box. We can rearrange the options here. So we can say, let's put this like that. Now we're going to ask for attendance information. Number. If we select a number variable, this lets us require the user to put in any type of number that could be could include decimals. So things like average age, that might be a decimal, or it could be like 22.3 is the average age. Or you could say miles from office. The event was held 5.5 miles from the office. If you wanted to have a number that could never include decimals, you would pick integer. So that would be things like children present. There's never going to be a decimal number of children present. So let's do that. Let's click on the settings thing to say children present. And this one we're going to use average age. Now, if you wanted to track the number of people that were in attendance for an event, you would actually want to use this special attendance total variable type. So what this is it's really just an integer variable type. So options, a text input limited to integers used to specify the total attendance. So it's going to only require integers, but the database will know that that variable is the total attendance, and will be able to do lots of fancy things in the reporting world to know that that's the total attendance. So total attendance there. Move this like that, that like that. We can also select the number of new attendees. And this one is just as you would think. Just whenever you want to track the number of new people that were in attendance, you would use this variable. And the reason for having this a whole separate variable type is now the database will be able to get an unduplicated count of attendees over multiple events. And I'll explain in a separate video how the database will be able to calculate that for you. Let's put these back here. You also have the option of attendance subsets. So for example, you've got the total attendance, but you also want to know of the attendees, how many people were female, how many were male, and how many were transgender. And the variable name for this is genders. We can also set up another one for locations. And just to make things easier, I'm just going to put in mile wide some states there. So you'll be able to say there was 5 females, 2 males, 1 transgender. If the user tries to put in numbers of genders that don't add up to whatever they specify for the total attendance, the database will kind of give them a warning to say, sorry, the entry was not added because the totals there didn't add up. And other thing to keep in mind here is if you can run a report later and say, okay, how many females were there? You can run a report later and say how many people from Massachusetts were there, but you could never run a report that says how many females from Massachusetts were there, because the database has no idea, who's who in this mix here. So if you have concerns about wanting to have that kind of data come up in your reports, mixing and matching kind of attendance subsets, please talk to me more and I can explain more why that is if you're confused about why that is, and things that we can do to get around that. Other types of variables that we can add in is a select one. So we can say event location, and we can put in a bunch of names. On and on and on. So notice here that there's you're also supposed to put in a code. This is just one of those things where it's better to keep track of, in the data, to keep track of the code number instead of the option name. If you don't want to bother thinking of a code number for every option name, then you don't have to. Just type in another option and the database will come up with the code for you. You can choose to reorder these options here just to make the order in the list be different. And again, let's say this one should be required. Also, I want to point out there is no variable type for location. It's going to be a lot easier for you to just create a select one variable and put in all the different cities in your region, and that'll make it so it's just a simple drop down and not the more complicated input every city in the whole country field that's in the rest of the database. So we're going to save that. Let's do select multiple. And we can say, maybe topics covered. Don't feel like coming up with different topics for this right now, so I'm just going to do that. We can do yes, no variable, so we can say like lawyers present. Yes, no. And we can do a time spent variable. So this is going to give you the same drop down that's included in the adding services and adding groups options part of the database. So like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever you've decided for that. And finally, individual client. So this is going to be a input box where you'll be able to select a client that's already in the database. This is not meant to be a way to keep track of attendance, so you wouldn't want to have like 18 individual client fields in here to keep track of attendance for everybody. That's too much. It's better to have a group event type instead of events if you want to do that. So an example for how do you want to use this is you would say like client presenter, and then you'd be able to select, okay, Jane Doe presented at this event. Let's move everything down so I can put in another header. Save changes. We've just created an event structure. Now when we go back to the home page, go to events, you can select legal training, and here are all the options that we just came up with. Go back to event types, legal training, edit option structure, and now when we go to edit the option structure, we get this alert. Attention, you are editing an already existing structure. Please make sure you've read the dangers of editing variables before proceeding. This is a very important help file which goes about explaining good changes that you can make and bad changes that you can make, changes that will have serious negative impact on any existing data that you have. So, as I say in this help file, if in doubt, please contact Steven for advice before you make changes. It's a lot better to talk to me about making sure that something you're going to do is not going to mess things up, instead of making a change and having to pay me to go and fix up your existing data. Obviously, if you don't have any existing data for this event type, then you can really change whatever you want. But once you already have people who've put in data for this event type, making changes could be pretty bad. So make sure you really understand what kind of changes you're making before you make them. All right, the next video I'm going to make will explain how to run reports off of this data. So look for that wherever you found the link for this video. Thanks.